So we as humans need 5 times as much positive things to outweigh every negative thing you hear. And what happens in business life? It's the other way around.
Welcome to the O for Food's Sake podcast, where we unwrap the joys and struggles of working in the food industry so you can thrive in what you do best while sustaining a rewarding and fulfilling career or business. We are your hosts, Lucy Wager, food industry consultant,
and Amy Wilkinson, food industry coach. We've worked in the food industry for the last 20 years and we're here to share with you the benefit of our hindsight. Our podcast is for you to find new ways to cope with the daily struggles, but mostly to inspire you to work on what's not working to ultimately improve your career or business long term.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of O for Food's Sake. Today we have a very special guest with us. Andrew Thornton joins us today. Andrew is an entrepreneur, speaker and food industry change agent, and he's also the author of a book called Putting Your Heart Back into Business. Sorry, not putting your heart, putting the heart back into business. So Andrew and I met a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, about. But it feels like we've known each other longer than that to me, Andrew. And we met through a mutual connection in the food industry. And I would say we've got a bit of a connection and we just immediately sort of bonded. And he's a person in the industry that I feel like we've got very similar values and work in a similar way. And one of the things that I love about Andrew is the way he always starts a meeting. And that's part of his whole ethos, I think.
Oh, is this Andrew's that guy?
Yes. Yes.
That's very ominous.
I love that. I love it. We need to tell everybody how he starts a meeting. Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, I'll let him tell you about that. But yeah, I'm really excited to introduce him to Amy. And I also just said before we came on and recorded that I'm excited about this episode because I haven't really heard the full backstory of your background in the food industry, Andrew. So yeah, I'm excited to hear everything you're going to say. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So tell us how you got to briefly tell us how you got to where you are now. Where did it all start? How did you get into food?
So I got into food. I grew up in Dublin, and my first job, which I got before I was old enough to work behind the tills, was helping out in my local, well, you'd call it a convenience store now. It was a newsagents in Dublin, but it was early day thinking of convenience store. And I helped the owner, and I used to clean out the storeroom in the backyard until I was old. I wasn't too young to serve at the tills. And the great thing about that store, it was right literally under the head office of Superquinn, which, anybody in the global food industry will remember Superquinn and Fergal Quinn, who was an icon in the food industry. And I used to serve him his newspaper every morning. Morning, Mr. Quinn. Morning, Mr. Quinn. And actually, he's now passed away, but when I was writing the book, I did interview him for the book. And I did say, Fergal, you probably don't remember, but I used to, I remember Declan, because the guy who owned the shop was one of his managers. So that was my introduction to the food industry. So when after a degree in UCD, I was at the final interview stage in a group panel with Mars. I knew a bit about selling sweets, so it'd probably help me.
Yeah.
To get into Mars, the interview from Mars, the final interview is 48 hours long. You're away in a hotel for 48 hours.
Ooh,
they really know. Mars is a wonderful company. They really know how to select the right people.
Yeah.
Did a great stint of time there. Got headhunted to Ogilvy, which I didn't want to leave Mars particularly, but it was too good an opportunity to refuse. Ended up not particularly interesting story. Ended up starting a consulting business for them, which we then took private. So ran that for a number of years called SRCG. I suppose one of our claims to fame is we did bring category management across from the US into the UK. We were the first people to do that.
That's a big claim to fame.
It is.
That's a big claim to fame.
Yeah. And we ended up specializing in small format retail, convenience retail. And we sort of became global specialists. We decided we were small. At peak, we were 30 people. So we were pretty small. So we need to specialize in something and be really the best at something. And that was convenience retail. And I had a midlife crisis in my early 40s. Thinking, am I really going to do this for the rest of my days? So I did the obvious thing is I went and bought some convenience stores because, so gatekeeper turned poacher or the other way around, whatever it is. And my ongoing joke is most men, when they get in their 40s and their midlife crisis, they buy a Porsche, but I bought 2 supermarkets.
That sounds way more fun, to be fair.
Yes. Through Budgens. So Budgens at that stage had relatively recently been bought by Musgrave, the Irish company, who I have a great respect for. They were a client in our consulting days. So I bought 2 Budgens stores when they were basically divesting. So the Budgen story was a very old. There was a Mr. Budgen back in the 18-somethings. It went through all sorts of different stages. And Musgrave bought it and then sold off the individual shops to individual entrepreneurs so they could run the business in their area for their area, which is the model they have in Ireland. And it's really, it's allowed Musgrave to be really strong in the Irish retail scene, despite competing against Tesco and Dove being the Irish own lead supermarket. Did that for 15 years and realized with hindsight, I was doing it because I wanted to create a business that wasn't about short-term profits. It was actually a purposeful business. So one that is for the good of all, for all the stakeholders. So not just the shareholders. So for the employees, for the customers, for the community, for the suppliers, for the environment. So you're actually, and what I've realized, and it's actually well documented, it's not a unique realization, but if you focus on the other stakeholders, the shareholder bit takes care of itself. It's kind of obvious when you think about it.
Yeah.
You're really focused on your employees and your customers and your suppliers and your community and make sure they're all happy. But of course the bottom line is going to work. I mean, it's just, in Dublin we say it's bleeding obvious. It's a really, really simple thought. And yet most businesses focus on the shareholder. And in the book, we talk about various things. Tesco, I've interviewed, I got to know Dave Lewis very well through a big plastic-free campaign we ran. And the fact that partway through the Budgens ownership, Booker had bought Budgens from Musgrave and then Tesco and Booker merged. So I got to know Dave very well. But if you look at the Tesco story and the accounting scandal, that all came from a focus. Tesco went from being a business which is all about satisfying customer needs to one about satisfying our profit needs. And the pressure on the system all the way down led people to do things that were actually illegal.
Yeah.
And pretty much amazing no one went to jail because they really did. It was fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it blinds you, doesn't it? Because you just become so blinkered that you can't see outside the bigger picture.
And what Dave Lewis joined and he was talking to people in the company, he said, there's nothing wrong with the values and the purpose of the company as you lot, as in how they were being lived by the directors. So Thornton's Budgens, our purpose was we are the community supermarket that really care about people and planet. That's what we were all about.
And tell us about that the plastic-free thing that you did, because I remember hearing something that you said, and I was like, wow, that sounds like somebody travelled an hour and a half or something to come because you were the only people at the time.
Yes, and it was our crowning moment, I would say, as a business. 2018, Blue Planet 3 had come out, David Attenborough. Everybody's thinking, oh my God, plastic's a huge problem. There was a retailer in the Netherlands called Ecoplaza who put a plastic-free aisle, so they had a whole section in one store of plastic-free products. And I met the social enterprise, A Plastic Planet, who helped them do that. A wonderful woman called Sean Sutherland and her partner, Fred. And their purpose is to turn off the plastic tap, because we're all addicted to plastic. So what we did was we were the first retailer in the world to launch plastic-free zones. So we had 28 zones. Every category of the store had a plastic-free section and zone in it with products. So you could have come and done a full weekly shop in Thornton's Budgens, Belsize Park, without having to use any plastic whatsoever. And we launched in 10 weeks, we launched 1,800 products. We got up to pre-COVID, we got to 2,600. Now, some were really simple, Amy. Like, we just moved fruit and veg from being 60% packaged, 40% loose to 85% loose.
Yeah.
And we only had the 15% in package that we couldn't find a loose solution to. Berries was one particular challenge. At the time, you just couldn't do berries. So, and other simple things with our fish, instead of writing fish in a plastic bag, we got really high quality waxed paper. Stick the price label, which is made of paper, bump, off it goes. It's sealed. I remember being the trial. I took it home for a few days in a row just to make sure it didn't leak before we done it. And we did it for 3 things. 1, so we were responsible for less plastic. B, our customers had a choice of being plastic free. But most importantly, to show the big guys it wasn't as difficult as they were letting on it to be. And that's how I got to know Dave Lewis so particularly well, and have maintained, relationship, friendship with him subsequently. And the thing that struck me most on that day was 3 people came to me in the team and said it was the proudest day of their working life.
Wow.
Yeah, and they weren't kids. These were people who were in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And we had the actor Jim Broadbent, aka Horace Slughorn from Harry Potter, and Dame Janet Sussman, who's wonderful Shakespearean actress, both of whom were customers who came to open up. We had school kids there, and the school kids were all saying, "Oh, Horace, Horace, Horace!" And it was just wonderful. And we had a massive response. We had a 6% uplift in total store sales instantly, which guys know grocery. That's like, you don't get that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we got global coverage. In fact, so Dave Lewis basically later on went on to say that we changed the relationship between supermarkets and plastics globally, which is not bad for one shop in North London.
Yeah, amazing. But like you say, just proving that it can be done. Yeah, it's harder to do it on a bigger scale, but you did it. You did it.
And the reason we could do it was because of our purpose and our values and the way we were with people. Because people broke their balls, to get that done. And it was, I took all the glory. I was on TV, I was on radio interviews, I was on Al Jazeera, Canadian TV, all that sort of stuff. But it was the team who did it, all the hard work, who were there till 11 o'clock at night sometimes. And a Plastic Planet had somebody, Frankie, who they seconded to us, who was absolutely amazing. I mean, sort of like a tyrant, but in a good way, saying, "No, we got to do this." And there were times when people said, "Oh, can we put off the launch?" I said, "No, we're not going to put off the launch. And if we own whatever number we get to, the target was 1,500. If we only launch 1,000 a day, then so what? We actually got to."
Oh, you did. So you smashed the target.
Smashed the target. And we got to 2,600 before COVID came along. And then when COVID came along, the whole momentum behind the plastic-free movement.
Everything changed.
Everybody wanted it covered in plastic.
Yeah.
So I guess that gives you a good taste of the ethos of Thornton's Budgens and what we were about doing. And people would talk about it being a family and being part of the family.
Yeah.
And did you start? It sounds like you realised during that journey with Thornton's Budgens that you transitioned into this heartful leader. So you didn't start it with that vision in mind. So where did the change happen?
Well, I got bored in the consulting business. I knew I didn't want to do it forever. I loved retail. Budgens had been taken over by Musgrave. I liked Musgrave. I thought, why not? Sounds like a good idea. Let's give it a whirl.
It's a midlife crisis that's ended up with a really positive impact. It doesn't always end up in a positive impact, does it? Like you say.
Absolutely. And very quickly, we were the first UK retailer to stop giving away free carrier bags, for example. So very, very quickly. I just don't know. Something flipped in me. Like, my God, the food industry and the planet. This is in 2006. So, I mean, bear in mind that the first climate change report was produced for Lyndon B. Johnson in 1963. But it was still relatively sort of like, this is really serious. And the food industry is a big contributor. I mean, 25% of the carbon footprint of the world is food industry. All of the destruction of the rainforest is the food industry. So the food industry has a lot of challenges, I would say, at the moment. Which sort of segues neatly into kind of, I guess, what I'm doing now. Because the food industry is facing into some very serious crises. But it's not new. It's been building for some time. And I think what we tapped into was that. And what we could see, and it's people always say, "Oh, it's all very well for middle class North London, the tofu eating, Guardian reading brigade." But what we did show that there was a segment of the population that do care.
And it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere, and it normally does start in London. But I think that there are some really good examples of it shifting. Better Nature, the Better Nature brand, are a really good example of showing how better for planet and better for you products that initially seem quite niche can quite quickly start to become mainstream. They're in every Tesco store now, and it's and once upon a time they would have been just in London, and it has to start somewhere, and it has to get we have to keep trying and moving things forward, because the problem isn't going to go away.
So what led you to writing this book then?
It was just really clear I had to write the book on the story of what we did, and to get out there to people, there is a different way of running a business. It started off as a solo enterprise. My partner, Eudora, who is a coach, and she did a lot of the coaching We did, because we did a lot of coaching workshops sort of stuff, helping people to be authentically themselves. That's I mean, Lucy was saying, what does heartful business mean? It means letting people be authentically themselves.
Mm.
And it's about psychological safety. It's safe. So most businesses, it's not safe to truly be yourself.
Yeah, we were talking about this morning.
Yeah, or make any mistakes or anything.
And I was at dinner with some people I know the other night, and a guy I know and his partner, and she sort of said, oh yeah, I used to love going to your store because of the tomatoes. I said, that is his story. So when you went into Thornton's Budgens, there was this enormous, in the British tomatoes display, 3 meters by 3 meters of tomatoes. And I don't exaggerate, the most phenomenal display. And the story behind that, which I think is another story of Thornton's Budgens, is that Eudora had started to coach people in the store, and decided we should train some internal people to be coaches of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love this.
Yeah, I know. I told you.
one of the coaches, Sharma, who ended up being co-leader of the business, was coaching the fruit and veg, Seelan, who ran the fruit and veg department. And we do an exercise called Inflow. It's a 2-dimension, 2x2 matrix. What you love doing, what you hate doing, what you're really good at doing, what you're not so good at doing. The idea is, if you can get your whole life in the top right-hand corner, then you have a business that succeeds. Your working life. And of course, the personal life as well. Mm-hmm. And she asked Seelan, and one of these, well, what are the things you love doing that you don't actually do at work? Oh, Seelan, I love making things. Yeah, I just love. So why don't you do that at work? Because we're a supermarket, you know. Oh, yeah, well, when I first joined, Seelan had been in his business for 15 plus years. When I first joined, I made a display of something, and the then manager told me it was like a piece of shit, and what was I doing? And he closed down his whole creativity and all that stuff. So Sharma said, well, do you think Andrew or Jim, who was the store manager, would say that? No, they wouldn't. Why don't you give it a try? So we started little, and every bit he built, he got more descriptive praise from me, from other people, but from customers. We started selling more tomatoes, we started more fruit and veg, and it's got bigger, bigger, and bigger, and bigger. And that is the story of Thornton's Budgens. It's about tomatoes. So answer to your question, Lucy, what is heart in business? It's about tomatoes.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, I love that. And as you're talking, we've also spoken to Ramona from Ramona's Hummus.
Listen.
And she was talking about how she tries to encourage people to put love into the products that they're making. And like, this is it's exactly the same thing, isn't it? It's like that passion, bringing your passion and that energy, like translating into the work that you're doing or the food that you're producing or the display that you're making. And it makes such an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's why so many artisan products taste so amazing, because they are made with love.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was talking at a conference recently, and there was reading a book by this Jesuit monk, and I'm not, I brought up in Catholic Ireland, so I'm not a big fan of the Catholic Church, generally speaking. But he speaks very wisely. He said that it started to go wrong when there used to be a point where people made things for their own use or their own joy. So they made things because they needed to feed their family, or because they wanted a nice piece of art on the wall. And the Industrial Revolution disconnected all that, and you don't make things anymore for the people. It's a disconnected process. You're not connected anymore. And I think the way to get that back is through purpose. So I think people who work for purposeful companies, there is that connection to what they're producing.
Yeah.
So that is the way, because we're not going to go back to how it was. Although the way Donald Trump is smashing up the world at the moment, maybe we will go back to the whole thing will fall apart, and we'll go back to growing fruit and veg in the garden and being a little local economy, but probably not. But purpose-driven companies that you guys both know and love, that is the connection. You're doing it for a higher purpose and a higher reason. You're not doing it because it's a job, or you're not doing it to make as much money as possible. Because as soon as the objective is to make as much money as possible, as Tesco beautifully demonstrated in the 2013 to 16 period, you lose the plot.
Yeah. And that's where it has all gone wrong, isn't it? And, and I know you're really passionate about this as well, Andrew, in terms of doing things better and saving the food industry from itself and creating a better environment for everybody. And this is the thing that frustrates me about the conversation around UPFs is there has to be a way for us to improve things in the food industry without completely reverting and demonizing every single food product that exists and, not giving the food industry a chance to turn things around and the time that's needed to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick breather here to hear from our fantastic sponsors. They help keep the podcast going, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. As we all know, the food industry never stands still, and it's not getting any easier. More pressure, tighter deadlines, and endless spreadsheets. Sound familiar? Point 74 is the perfect solution for cutting through today's product development challenges, enabling teams to create, cost, comply, and collaborate with ease. Used by 1 in 5 of the UK's top food manufacturers and 2 of the top 5 retailers, it's the software behind the label of your favourite food products, delivering improved quality, margins and processes, all in one seamless system.
Ensuring food safety and quality is crucial. That's why businesses trust Microsearch Laboratories, part of the IFP Labs Group. UCAS accredited Microsearch offers microbiological, nutritional and allergen testing for food, drink and water, delivering fast results and expert support. With over 30 years of experience, trusted by leading manufacturers and retailers, and a commitment to sustainability, Microsearch is your partner in product safety. Visit micro-search.co.uk to learn more.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's dive right back in.
And I've had, you've seen people like Chris Van Tolliken has said, well, it's the next tobacco industry. And some people, and I think Chris Van Tolliken is really interesting. He's very controversial, but he's got some good evidence and some data about, and there is about UPFs. And I don't think it's a conspiracy. And I don't think anybody, I've worked in the food industry for over 40 years. I've never heard anybody saying, oh, well, yeah, if we mix that with that, then people will want to consume more and consume more.
Exactly.
Never heard it.
Where it's happened.
Yeah.
And I think so. UPFs, HFSS, microplastics, anti-obesity drugs, the strive for ever lower food prices. Oh, and by the way, we're trashing the planet. 6 things which any one of those would be a challenge enough, and it is. And the answer, I believe, lies in innovation. Process innovation, ingredient innovation, packaging innovation. So my big drive, and this is the sort of hypothesis I came up with back into last year, again, when I started to really dig deep into this. And I'm finding those ideas, and they're sitting in universities in different places. So I'm working very closely with Enterprise Ireland, which is an amazing state body in Ireland, and some of the universities and the research institutes in Ireland. There's some extraordinary ideas sitting in labs that have not been commercialized. And they haven't been commercialized because the language the scientists in the lab speak, to the language that startups speak, to the language that corporates speak, they speak 3 different languages.
Yeah.
And I think that's the answer. And I'm sort of an advisor or chair to a few different companies, one of whom is purpose is basically they use AI to reduce food waste in manufacturing. And can they believe, so 10%, roughly speaking, of all food that goes into a manufacturing plant is wasted, roughly speaking, in all the different stages. And that's just in the plant. That's not before the farm gate. That's not in the retail supply chain. That's not in the fridge or the supermarket or the domestic fridge. That's just in that bit. And there, so the work that we're doing, we believe can have that. So that could take 5% off the cost of manufacturing goods. And on the other end, I'm working with a startup that's got an alternative to sugar, a natural alternative to sugar, which could revolutionize things. And a lot of people there's a lot of work being done in this space, but it's natural. There's no point in, it's not like the saccharin and all these things, which the science is showing Diet Coke is worse for you than regular Coke because you may sugar out, but you're putting something nasty in. So those are just a couple of examples. And if you put the two together, I was with a senior guy in one of the big food companies yesterday. So the challenge with the new ingredients is they tend to be more expensive. And if you are making ready meals for Sainsbury's are not going to say, oh, it's fine to put the price up. No way. But if I can bring you that and also a way to cut your costs so that you can go to Tesco, Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer's and say, actually, we've got this product that it's much better for you because we've got the amazing new ingredients. And it's the same price because we've managed to save money elsewhere. So that's the dream combination. And I think we need to be working on both of those sides of the equation, as well as the packaging one.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality, isn't it? I think there's a will, we all, as individuals, even if we work in a big corporate and, are seen from the outside or from the press as this big bad corporate, actually we're all individuals that do, most people care and don't deliberately want to go and ruin the planet. I'm sure there are a few You mentioned one of them earlier. He's doing quite a good job of it. But ultimately, we're in business to make money, right? Which is kind of the opposite of what we've been saying. A heart-led business is great, but ultimately, if you don't make the money, you can't, survive. So it's about getting that balance, isn't it? So you've got to have a commercially viable solution. It can't just be a solution.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that there is a danger in certain movements that profit's a dirty word.
Mm.
You need to make a sustainable profit. Because if we didn't make a profit in Thornton's Budgens, we would have been gone bust and we couldn't have done plastic.
Yeah.
The various companies, Better Nature, lots of other companies, Pippin Nuts, companies that have done really well are changing the way people see food. They have to make a profit, otherwise they can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
And they bust and they don't make a difference. So,
but it goes back to what you were saying right at the beginning, where if you have that focus on creating, the right environment for people to work in, the right product that people want to buy, if you're focusing on those elements, the profit should come, as long as you're focusing on the right areas and you're nurturing all the areas of the business that can lead you to that profitability. And I think this is where you and I really share a lot of interest, Andrew, is on this sort of tech side and what AI can do for the food industry to help us achieve what we need to achieve in a profitable way, but in a way that is going to be better for the environment, better for health. And because there is a disconnect at the moment between those really exciting things that are happening and transitioning them into the mainstream. And it's unlocking that I think is so exciting to make a real shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And it is, the word is into the mainstream, getting them out of the labs. Yeah, some of the stuff I'm coming across is just extraordinary. And there are ways. And I'm working with people who have the experience of doing this, of taking these ideas and bringing them to life. And that is the plan, is to really focus in on that with some pace. And the thing is that innovation never comes from the big behemoths in any industry. So Airbnb, Uber, Ryanair, Tesla, they're all
someone doing something crazy, that you think, what are you doing? That's innovation, isn't it? It's a thing that seems to be completely mad.
But it doesn't, it doesn't suit. I work for the big food, I work for Mars, it doesn't suit. You've got a nice business running, making the products you make. It doesn't really suit you if the whole thing turned upside down.
No.
Yeah.
If it is turned upside down by someone else, then you just go buy them. And that's what a lot of big food companies do.
Yeah.
But I think there's a way to nurture these big companies who know the challenges there, and the big retailers know the challenges. Get them to help nurture some of the solutions, to be part of the solution. And the retailers are very, very aware that this is a big crisis and that they have to be proactive in doing something.
And I think I had a conversation with Judith Batchelor a few weeks ago, and
I remember Judith I worked in M&S with Judith.
Yeah.
Ago.
And Judith was the brand director at Sainsbury's when I was a, tiny little product developer there. So, I think she's amazing. And when we were on this call, she said, God, Lucy, things are so different now. Innovation just isn't done in the same way that there isn't innovation. And interesting, I was reading a document today that was talking about innovation in Easter. And I was like, none of that is innovation. That isn't innovation. That's not what innovation is. And it's like, we use that word innovation in a, very throwaway way. And we've kind of lost what real innovation is. And we've all been through a very difficult time with COVID, and now there's a cost of living crisis and the world is just going to pot. And so it does make you risk averse.
Yes.
But the only way that things are going to change is by doing things differently.
Absolutely.
We need to go back to the beginning, and I want you to tell us. I want you to tell us, Andrew, how you start meetings, because one of the things that I love about Andrew is you are a successful white male that's been in the industry for ages, and so you are not the type, stereotypically, you're not the type of person that would start a meeting in this way or write a book about putting the heart back into business. And you say a lot of the stuff that Amy and I have talked about on this podcast for the last 4 years. And I think you demonstrate that you can be different to your peers and do things differently and make positive impact. And the meetings that I've been in with you, you ground us all and we start. And it's just a really nice way to start a meeting, but it's not.
So this is a small example of what you're saying about Andrew, is that of how he's different.
Yeah.
from the-
Yeah.
So tell us what you do
No,
at the
so
start of a meeting.
basically, it's called a check-in. So the principle is we generally go into meetings full speed. So we come rushing from somewhere else, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, busy head, blah, 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 straight into meetings.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a check-in is, and there are various different forms, but the basic principle is there's like a couple of minutes of silence and some deep breathing just to arrive. Because we operate from the head.
Mm-hmm.
That's how humans mostly operate. And actually, we have a brain body, we have a physical body, we have an emotional body, and we have an intuition body. And most of us don't access 3 of the 4 we have. So we're only using a quarter of our potential if we do everything from the head.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing a sort of slight bit of mindfulness, bit of breathing, you allow people to connect to their physical body, to their emotional body, and to their intuition. And have you ever been in a time where you've never been in this situation where you know exactly what to do if you listen? It's called intuition. And we mostly don't use intuition anymore.
Yeah.
So a check-in, a breathing, and then you basically give everybody the chance. And a short one is just 2 words to describe how you're feeling now. And a longer one, if you've got more time or less people, is just, in a sense, how are you feeling right now? Yeah. Could be I'm really upset because I had a row with my partner before I left the house this morning. And it's just like, oh, blah. Now, by saying that, it doesn't mean that anybody's going to do anything about it, but by expressing it, you leave it behind.
Mm-hmm.
So as humans, we need to speak and be heard
Mm.
to let stuff go.
Mm-hmm.
So in the supermarket, people would often come and say, because traditionally retail is boss-led, central store manager down, what do I do, boss, that? Yeah. So my response question often will be, well, what do you think you should do, Amy? You know what to do, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to be able to articulate it. And by speaking without being interrupted, so that's another key part, is creating an environment where people aren't interrupted. You start to share, well, I think what we should do is this. And actually, no, if you did, and I'm just sitting listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the person who's running the fruit and veg department. You know what the
Mhm.
challenges are. How the hell am I supposed to know? It's not, And that's the same principle. So the idea is you just get everybody to be really present, to be calm, to let go of stuff that might be bugging them, that keeps them unpresent. And you then run meetings in a way that you structured, you give people a chance to participate. You have rules about not interrupting each other. To the extreme is you can have a thing called a talking stick, which is a Native American idea. And I was just trying to pick my pen up here and I've dropped it on the floor. Use anything as a talking stick. When you have a talking stick, I have the talking stick, I'm speaking, no one can interrupt me until I put the talking stick down and someone else can pick it up. And that means people are safe to explore their ideas. So how often have you been in a meeting where somebody says, do you know something? I think if we were to do so, and someone said, oh, we did that before, it didn't work. Shut down.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's the last time Lucy's going to pipe up in that meeting with an idea.
Yeah.
And actually, while your idea, on the surface of it, they may have tried before, but actually, if you have the chance with a talking stick to say, so what I was thinking of, if we were to make a business that just made electric cars, oh, that sounds absolutely mad. But, if you have a talking stick and you can explore it
Mm.
and develop the idea without being interrupted, and then you sort of say, okay, and then it moves on to someone else. So that's something that, and then you decide, let's explore whether we might set up electric car companies. Sounds a bit mad, but let's explore it because there's something in that.
Yeah.
But in a classic brainstorming, that would have been just, and you would have been saying, well, if we were to make green cars instead of blue ones, that would be a great innovation, wouldn't it? Exactly what you said,
Yeah.
Luke.
Yeah.
And I think that's a factor behind innovation, is the way companies are run does not encourage innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
one of the
everything's
things
too
that's learning
far.
about safety, not making mistakes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's just that, like, the time to just like slow down and also just have that like human connection with the other people in the room as
Yeah.
well, I think is really, which we can so often lose.
And I think there's so much about what you're talking. I mean, obviously, this coach sat here is going, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
yes, to everything you're saying." But taking that moment to get everybody's, our nervous systems are up here.
Mm.
When we're running from one meeting to the other, and you are not making rational decisions and not thinking rationally, and like you say, just not feeling that inner knowing that we have a lot of the time, because we're just like, oh well, I've got to answer this and I've got to do this, I've got to do that. actually, if everyone just calm down a bit and use that.
In encouraging psychological safety, I think it's such a good tool for that. Because the first time I ever met you, we did that exercise, Andrew, I immediately knew Andrew is the kind of person who is going to respond well to me if I say, I'm not feeling
Something-
great today.
Yeah.
Or I can't do this because, it immediately tells you something about the other person, doesn't it? Like, and the other people in the room, how they respond to doing something like that tells you something about them. And, it's such a simple but brilliant tool.
Yeah. Just the other end of the equation, which again, Lucy, you experienced fairly recently, is a gratitude round. What we don't do in life. So we are hardwired from the days when life was in danger and you could be walking around Hampstead Heath and a tiger would eat you. We are hardwired to look for negative things. Because basically, if you thought you heard a tiger and you didn't, you survived. But if you didn't think you heard a tiger and there was one there, you'd be dead. So we as humans need 5 times as much positive things to outweigh every negative thing you hear. And what happens in business life? It's the other way around. Its majority is development, feedback, development needs. In an appraisal, how much time is spent on descriptive praise, what you do well, versus development needs. So one of the things we did in the supermarket is we used to do, I and others who would do store walks looking for things going right. So most retailers, that's not working. And literally that means going around the store. All I'm doing is using descriptive praise. I learned descriptive praise from a parenting coach when my kids, who are now 28 and 30, when they were 4 and 6.
I love that you had a parenting coach 20 years ago, Andrew. I mean...
Well, indeed. Noelle Janice Norton, fabulous American woman whom actually a beautiful young girl at the age of 6 walked into my life, which is my stepdaughter now. And we went to see Noelle actually at one point because I was trying to use what I'd learned from her for my boys with Hannah. And she's a girl, so it's completely different. So we had to go back to that. And the point was that what Noelle taught me was that we are hardwired to hear negative stuff. You're my boss, Lucy. If you say, oh, Andrew, that was a fab job, it means nothing because you told me I was a piece of shit yesterday because I didn't. So descriptive praise means, in the supermarket context, the fish counter looks amazing. I love the way you've got the ice and those lemons and the way that fish is, and you're describing the praise because then you think this is genuine. Oh, that looks fab. You did a cool job yesterday, Amy. Means nothing. So how you can run a gratitude review at the end of a meeting, and again, this is a longer meeting, is you get everybody to say one thing they appreciate about everybody else in the meeting. Now, we did a round robin version where we just went around the circle and somebody said an appreciation of the person next to them. But if the 3 of us were doing it, I would start by telling Lucy what I appreciate of her. Then you would do that, Amy. Then we'd move to do Lucy and I would, and then and it doesn't take long. The more people you have, the longer it takes. But it's just... The other thing you can do at the start of meetings, and we used to do this in Thornton's Budgens, is we start the meetings by what's going well. So we'd spend the first 10 minutes about the things that are going well. Because normally what do you do in meetings? Okay, so you go straight into the problems. Whereas if you have a 1-hour review meeting, weekly meeting with a team, you start by having the first 10 minutes, you just talk about stuff that's going well. And do you know what that does to the atmosphere of the meeting? Whoo! Yeah. So when you're dealing with the shit that's not working, then you're doing that from a positive, creative, resourced, intuitive place rather than a not a place.
Yeah, it's so obvious, isn't it? Like, we're humans, we need like positivity around us to function.
And then the third big thing, so check-in, appreciation, and listening. So we talk people in the supermarket, and we do, my partner and I have a business called Heart and Business. She mostly runs it now. I kind of haven't so much. But when we run training courses, we teach people how to listen. Seems really obvious. But it's just that the talking is just listening. So I'm listening to you, Amy, which means I'm not cutting across you. I'm listening to you. At most, I'm just going, yeah, tell me more. But I'm really not saying anything. And maybe at the end of it, I'd say, so Amy, what I heard you said, if I've got this right, is that the challenge you've got with this new product is because, Sainsbury's have said they don't like this about it. And while Tesco love it, we've got this issue with Marks and Spencer's. Am I getting it right? Yeah. And you say, yeah, that's it. Yeah. And in fact, the thing, and suddenly you work out what to do.
And actually, there's so much power in that. I'm like I say, excited coach here. And I know, like, I'm going into coaching supervision this afternoon. One of the things my supervisor is brilliant at is the reflecting back just hearing it reflected back to you, makes you feel heard, which as humans, we all want to feel heard. But there'll be a slight nuance in the way it's said back to you that might unlock something that you wouldn't have thought. You know, you're hearing it from somebody else's perspective, or just the same words back, and it unlocks something that doesn't happen when everybody's waiting to talk and not actually listening.
And you might also say, no, that's not what I said, Amy. What I said was, you paraphrased me, I said this. And what I said was that. Okay. That's really different between, this and this. They seem so, but actually it's really different. And that helps you clarify. That's a really important point. It's this, not that.
So making sure you have that check-in at the start, giving gratitude at the end, and making sure you're listening in the middle. That's your top tips.
That's the top tips for life.
Yeah.
So all of this is life. It's not. It's not. When I did this parenting coach with Noel stuff, I said, I was running the consulting. This is great stuff. I use all this in work because it's just, kids are just little adults. The same thing.
Yeah. But we can forget.
All adults are just little kids. I'll just
Yes. Noel said positive, firm, and consistent. Be positive, supportive, but be firm and be consistent. And as parents, I don't know about you, Amy, but I know Lucy and I are both parents. It is really easy to be inconsistent. So you have a rule that you don't leave the table and finish eating. And 5 or 6 times Johnny doesn't leave the table without eating. No one says that, and suddenly you go, "Hey, we've got a rule in this place." What were the rules around here?
Oh God, yeah. Oh no, you were getting me questioning my parenting now. But you're absolutely right.
But I think this stuff is so similar to everything that we talk about in the podcast, and it's those obvious things that we need as humans that we can so easily forget about for some reason when we step into work mode or parenting mode. So I think this is going to just have really resonated with so many people. And absolutely. Andrew, where can people find you, and how do they get a copy of your book?
Well, the book is called Putting the Heart Back into Business. You can place it in online bookshops. Amazon, for example. And it's available in audiobook, ebook, traditional book.
Well, I love an audit.
Are you the
narrator?
Narrator is the word.
Your daughter and I are the narrators, yes.
Oh, nice.
I'm so going to go. I love an audiobook, and I love listening to your voice, so I'm going to go and download it.
I didn't know it was an audiobook. I'm going to get the audiobook too.
Yeah, because what you have to do, you have to read the book. You read it word for word. And you can't change it. And you can't think, well, actually, I wish I want to.
Cool.
Great news. And I have to say to our editor, Bev, and Sue, the publisher, there was not one single mistake. So that's when you read typo. Oh, my God. There's a typo. That was quiet, not quite, or whatever. Didn't find any of those. But there were times when you read it, I could have said that better. It's really kind of strange, but it was
what Amy says is done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Exactly. And you're on LinkedIn, aren't you, Andrew?
I'm on LinkedIn. Yes, I am. Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I knew I would enjoy this episode with you.
And you were right, Lucy, when you were like, you're gonna love Andrew.
Knew it.
Thank you very much.
Great conversation.
I love chatting to you as well. That's really fun.
Thank you. Brilliant.
And another thing, fourth thing, fun. You have to have fun.
Yes.
And this whole thing about it's all very serious. Have fun, because do you know something? You get much more done when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So true.
Well, and you spend more time at work and more time with people at work than you do with your family. So, you may
as well have fun.
Yeah. You've got to have fun. That's why we're lucky to work in the food industry, because it is a fun place to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you. We'll see everybody else next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it, rate and review us. It really helps us reach more food industry pros like you.
For more resources, head over to our website, overfoodsake.co.uk, and join our mailing list to stay in touch.
And if you'd like to connect with us, come say hello on LinkedIn. We're both there, Lucy Wager and Amy Wilkinson.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.